Many people when shopping for a watch will look at case size as one of the first qualifiers. So in this video, I want to continue our series looking at some of the best watches for specific case sizes, this one being 37 millimeters. So how this works, we'll be looking at 4 different categories: field and aviation, dress, sports, and then everyday, with a few watches for each category. All the watches will be between 37 to 38 millimeters, no exceptions. 20 watches will be mentioned total, and I'm gonna focus mostly on mainstream brands, so micro brands only as an exception. And if you haven't seen our other videos on this subject, we've already looked at 38 and 39 millimeters, which I can link to in the description down below. So if you are sometimes in that difficult position trying to buy gifts for somebody during the holiday season, I have a solution for you all. Buying a gift doesn't need to be hard this season with a gift card from TeddyBaldassarre.com. So watches are, I think, a pretty personal purchase. I think the fun thing about buying a watch is the own just journey and the hunt of getting something. So let somebody else have that hunt, buy a gift card. We have a variety of different values to accommodate many budgets, and it's a perfect last minute surprise for someone that you care about for the holiday season. Expedited shipping options are available if needed. Just contact us, we'll do our best to help you out. In addition, all of these purchases help out the content that we're creating here. We don't take money from the brands that produce content. Really what we do to actually fund all of this is through purchases on our website, TeddyBaldassarre.com. And if you do purchase a gift card, you will also get an invite to our exclusive live stream next year. Starting around in January, February, we will release the definitive date, but that is going to be where I will be answering some questions, Q&A environment, but I'm also going to be having some of the members of the team here talking about some of their areas of expertise, like Ben Lowry, he's our content manager, who is formerly a commercial diver, speaking about the myths of dive watches. Then you have Will Bethune, our head of photography and digital media, who will also be sharing some tips for watch photography. So if you like that idea, want to get involved in that, you also will get that incentive when you buy from TeddyBaldassarre.com. We'd love to have your business. So now we're looking at our field and aviation category for watches here at 37 millimeters. And to begin, we'll start with our more affordable option with the Bulova Hack A11. So this is a newer creation from Bulova, following their traditional history on creating field watches. They were one of the providers during World War II for the Allied forces and producing watches of the type. So this is an extension and a more modern, contemporary type of take on this. It does wear at a nice 37 millimeters. So if you like something that's smaller on the wrist, many field watches have these long lug-to-lug distances, but if you want something that wears a little bit more true to that, like I'm wearing a Hamilton Khaki Field mechanical on the wrist right now, I'd say it wears closer to a 39. This is a 37, potentially a 36 on the wrist. So it's much different with that lug-to-lug of 44.5 millimeters, also getting a mineral crystal on the top, which kind of has some vintage type of hue and feel to what it's going for. Automatic Miyota 82S0 on the inside. It does have hacking function, so that's nice to see. Water resistance does leave a little bit to be desired at 30 meters, but in terms of looks, I think this is a pretty sharp looking field watch and right at 37 millimeters, but wears smaller than that. So if you want something that wears closer to a 36, probably right in your wheelhouse. So for our next watch, we have a Seiko 5, a beloved line and family with the SNK 800 series. The one we're looking at here specifically is the 805. This is the green dial version. These watches are rather small on the wrist, 37 millimeters, thickness of 10.7 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug of 42.9 millimeters. So take what I was talking about earlier with the 36 millimeters with that Bulova Hack, maybe even make it smaller. I mean, these do wear small on the wrist. So 36 millimeters, maybe even slightly smaller than that when you get this on. 30 meters of water resistance, so same story there. And then on the inside, you have the venerable automatic Seiko 7S26, although it's probably going to be outdated by modern specifications with no hacking, no hand winding. It's still a beloved movement, and for many of these, you still can find them around $100. They have been going up a little bit. Availability is a bit more spotty compared to where they were years ago, but even to this day, a watch with a ton of charm. So now for our final of this affordable trio, we'll also have one other consideration in this category to follow, but here we have the Citizen Chandlers. How I would classify this watch is the pretty much direct alternative for Citizen to the Seiko SNK 800 series that we just looked at. You're talking about very similar case size and wearability, 37 millimeters, 45 millimeter lug to lug, so it is going to be a little broader on that end. Thickness of 9 millimeters, 100 meters of water resistance, so nice to see that, have a little bit more aquatic upside. And then a quartz Eco Drive caliber on the inside, so getting the upside of solar energy here to kind of have that set it and forget it type of lifestyle. So kind of depends on what you want to go for. Do you like mechanical? Do you like going for the Eco Drive, kind of set it and forget it? So a different type of consumer that might go for this compared to a mechanical timepiece, but still for the price range, you're talking around $150 for these. Good value, under $200 from this perspective, and right on the money for 37 millimeters. And for our final watch in this category, we have the Longines Spirit 37 millimeters. So this is a new release for 2022. maybe my favorites alongside the Zulu Time for this year from Longines. And I just think just because the Spirit had so much upside when it was first unveiled, I thought that watch was a great do-it-all timepiece, but the lug-to-lug dimension made that probably difficult for some people to swallow. This totally corrects that. So 37 millimeters, 44.9 millimeters, and those lugs are going to be slightly downswept to allow them to wear more compact on the wrist. 100 meters of water resistance, automatic ETA A31.L11. So this is a movement produced by ETA in collaboration with Longines, a proprietary movement. So it's going to stack up quite well against the competition, 70+ hour power reserve, and a COSC certification to go along with it. Sapphire crystal with pretty good AR coating on this. So good visibility, few different dial options to choose from. I think this is a spectacular release this year. Probably one of the sleeper picks of this year from the everyday category. I think this was slightly outshined by the Zulu Time, and for good reason. That watch was also class leading in many aspects, but I think this one does many of the same things. Maybe doesn't have the upside of being a GMT, but just checking off the boxes, that is what this watch simply does, maybe better than anyone around $2,000. Now moving to our next category, we have dress watches. To kick us off here, we have the Mito Commander 1959. So this is the retro creation of the Commander line, and really the defining characteristic of this watch is going to be the lack of traditional lugs. You have this mesh style bracelet that's just going to extend right into the case. It looks pretty seamless, but it's also going to make this wear smaller than even the 37 millimeters is going to indicate it. So essentially you're getting a 37 millimeter wide diameter for the entire case of the watch. So take that for how you will. I would say this wears closer to a 35 millimeter on the wrist, so it is quite small. Thickness is 10.5 millimeters, and movement on the inside, the automatic at a 2836. This watch has this funky kind of retro style design. It's not gonna be for everybody, and to go along with that, you're also getting an acrylic crystal on the top to just lean into that idea even further. But bracelet is comfortable, which is good considering the style that you're going for here and how so much it is a part of the design of the piece in totality. And also in terms of just a finishing across the board, I think Mito is pretty much near the top when you're talking about around $1,000 for their watches. They simply produce a nice watch for the money. Some people will say they lack the charm in certain areas of their collection, but this one is certainly not guilty of that. This one is much different than the conventional that you're going to find in this price range. For our next watch, we have the new King Seiko SPB 279. So these watches had mixed reviews when they were first unveiled. I have now covered them and I had some mixed feelings as well, but ultimately I think these are pretty well finished watches. I think the criticism of the movement were certainly warranted, and I would love to see Seiko continue to look the path and continue this path with King Seiko, because I don't think they should give up on what they're doing here. There's something to happen between this $1,000 to $3,000 price range that I think somebody that maybe wants to look at something of this style would definitely like to buy. They just have to find the right packaging around it. That's not to say that this watch is not worthy to buy, because I do think it is still a really compelling package. 37 millimeters, thickness of 12.1 millimeters, and a lug to lug of 43.6 millimeters. You're also getting 100 meters of water resistance, which is nice considering the dressy approach that this one has. Movement, automatic Seiko 6R31, probably the #1 downside of this piece, but the finishing is there both on the bracelet as well as the case, the lugs, even the small etching on some of the dial markers. Everything looks well put together. This does not feel like a conventional run-of-the-mill Seiko. Whether it's worth $1,700, I'll let just the consumer decide that. It was kind of on the fringe. I think if they were able to rework the movement of this, it'd be a no-brainer, but still, for the Seiko lover, this is one to consider for 37 millimeters and should be on this list. And I think a reason why there was some maybe potential resistance to the King Seiko is the fact that you have something like this available as well, and that's the SBG W231 from Grand Seiko. They're conventional 37 millimeter dress watch. These start at $4,300 and will go up from there with the different iterations that they've created in the last couple of years. Thickness is 11.6 millimeters, lug to lug of 44.3 millimeters, water resistance of 30 meters, and on the inside, you have a manual caliber, the 9S64 with a sapphire crystal on top, traditional sword style hands, very clean, symmetrical dial, no power reserve indicator, no date, just all about the business. And for around $4,000, you could argue that this is the best dress watch just by any brand for $4,000. This is a really solid wearing piece. This one wears pretty true to size, maybe slightly larger, but a good taste of that luxury position from Japan at just north of $4,000. So now for our next watch, we have the Cartier Ballon Bleu de Cartier. So this is a watch that is not going to be the conventional choice for Cartier. Not going to be the conventional choice, especially for men. And the Ballon Bleu for women, of course, is one of the biggest collections that you are going to come by. Wide variety of options to choose from on the women's side. On the men's side, this is kind of more of a unisex option, I would say. 37 millimeters, talking about $7,000 for more of a third-party movement that's structured here. So I don't know if it's going to be the one that's gonna snap as like the first option for somebody, but hey, looking at a Cartier watch, 37 millimeters, it felt like one to maybe include. 13 millimeters in thickness, you also are getting a moon-phased complication. Sapphire crystal, kind of more of an off the beaten path pick for Cartier that fits right at that 37 millimeters. And for our final pick in the dress category, we have A. Lange & Söhne Saxonia Thin. So there are several different Saxonia models. The Saxonia Thin is going to allow us to have that 37 millimeter case, is the one that comes to mind when thinking about this case size. And also is going to be the thinnest offering from Lange at 5.9 millimeters with help of that manual caliber, the L093.1. Movement is great to look at. You're still getting the touch of kind of bespoke craftsmanship with the hand engraving of the balance cock, $21,200 for a retail price. And the Saxonia Thin line is that very muted German approach to dress watches from a high horology perspective. The Saxonia Thin line was introduced in 2016 at 37 millimeters. And if you're familiar with Lange, you know that the Saxonia line is an important part of their DNA and design family, considering that this was one of the original 4 collections produced in 1994 with the resurgence of the brand that was really paramount for the now redevelopment of German watchmaking as a whole, but of course also Lange. So we're going to now move into the sports category. I decided to combine dive watches and chronographs for 37 millimeters, just candidly because there were not as many options that would support having both of those categories represented. So I wanted to just combine them. First, we have the Rado Captain Cook 37 millimeter. So the Captain Cook was originally unveiled in 1962. This was a period where dive watches were becoming more viable as commercial diving became more of a thing, as well as recreational diving became a safer activity. So this was Rado's take on a dive watch. Fast forward to around 5 years ago, Rado brings back the Captain Cook, and I think people forget now because there's so many different iterations of the Captain Cook that the original one that was brought back was at 37 millimeters. It was actually technically a limited edition for paying honor to the original year it was unveiled with 1,962 pieces. You now have a variety of different dial colors to choose from, including a ladies piece. My fiance actually owns the white dial version at 37 millimeters, but you also have some more unisex options in blue. These do wear smaller than 37 millimeters. I would say wears closer to a 36. So you have to just kind of know what you're getting into here. One of the best parts about the Captain Cook though, to me, has always been the thickness, 11.1 millimeters. You are only getting 100 meters of water resistance in this instance. Lume could, be a little bit better. Box sapphire crystal on these watches and a ceramic bezel on these that I think is a nice combination with that box sapphire. Just creates this really cool effect with that glossy tone. Now jumping into a chronograph here, we have one of my favorites from this brand. I absolutely adore this watch. This is the Zenith Chronomaster Shadow. When I first saw this watch, I was like, okay, I don't know if that's something I could pull off, but then I put this thing on wrist for the first time and I was like, okay, this is something special. I just adore this watch. 37 millimeters with the case. Now the lug to lug here is farther extended at 47 millimeters. I would say this wears closer to a 39 millimeter watch, but it wears unlike anything else you're going to find just because this A384 case is rather strange in its wearing dimensions, but it does fit incredibly well on a medium to smaller wrist. It has this black imposing presence with its case, which is a titanium case with a plating effect to create that more black kind of ceramic look. It's not ceramic, I know it looks like it, so just kind of have that considered, but it is so lightweight with the titanium, so it has a very similar type of feel on wrist. Thickness is 12.7 millimeters, and this is a big reason why I'm such a huge proponent of the El Primero caliber and how it's able to be way more thin compared to a lot of other automatic chronographs, especially under $10,000. Again, lug to lug of 47 millimeters and water resistance of 50 meters. And now for our final watch in the sports category, we have the Rolex Yachtmaster 37. So the Yachtmaster in many ways has been an underdog model from Rolex since it was unveiled in 1992. It doesn't have the same type of enthusiast charm that probably comes with the Milgauss or the Explorer 2, but it still is an overlooked model from Rolex. And I think the 37mm is actually a pretty unique option for Rolex, considering it has that dive watch sports DNA, but it's at a much more condensed and wearable size if you are somebody that maybe doesn't like these larger cases and how maybe the modern Submariner wears on the wrist. 37mm here, 10.7mm in thickness, and a lug to lug just south of 44mm, making this one wear pretty true to size, all things considered. Water resistance of 100 meters, so that is one of the catches with the Rolex Yachtmaster in comparison to the Submariner, but still plenty of enough water resistance for probably what anybody will need out there. Automatic Rolex 2236, so one of their smaller movements to fit the case, and a sapphire crystal on top. Another really cool thing about the Yachtmaster is it's not afraid to sample with different materials, especially with its bezels, with one being available with a platinum bezel, and considering the price, pretty compelling package for Rolex standards. So now for our final category, we have the everyday category. This is for a watch that walks the middle ground between dress and sports, can be very versatile, has some decent water resistance, and really can just be a jack of all trades in what it's going for. The first watch is from Nomos with the Nomos Club Sport Neomatic. This is a new creation in 2022 and one that definitely got my attention immediately upon its release. Just over $3,000, in-house automatic DUW 3001 movement. One of the best looking movements you're going to find for under $5,000 in my opinion. It's produced in-house by Nomos, also having their proprietary escapement, their swing system, which, considering that this is produced in-house and this is a true in-house movement, unlike a lot of other things that are marketed out there, Nomos is an independent brand. I think all things considered, this is a very well-constructed package. And that's not even getting into the design. The club language just looks great. It's playful, but it's also buttoned up just enough so it can be worn in a variety of different scenarios. This is coming in a couple different dial configurations. I personally like the petrol version. I think that just looks great. 37mm with case size, thickness of 8.3mm, upside of some of the Nomos movements considering just how thin they are, and lug to lug of 47.7mm. This one wears closer to a 39 to 40mm in probably actuality. If you are familiar with Nomos cases, no surprise. And also to just round it all off, 200 meters of water resistance, which is especially impressive considering it's only an 8.3mm thick case. For another watch from Rado, they're gonna make two appearances on this video. We have the Rado Golden Horse. This is another pillar from Rado that I'm a big fan of. I think this watch really does work in a variety of scenarios. I do think maybe the seahorse emblem, perhaps a little bit too much for some, but still these are really beautiful dials. You almost have this like vignettes type of approach with the dial, with the color and how it will gradually transition into black. I just love the way that that plays with the light. In addition, a variety of dial colors to choose from, 37mm on that diameter, thickness of 10.8mm, some of that coming from the dome profile of the crystal, and a lug to lug of 44mm, making this one wear pretty true to size. Water resistance is adequate at 50 meters, and an automatic ETA C07.611 on the inside, 80-hour power reserve, with again a sapphire crystal on top. So when most people think of Zodiac, they probably think of the Seawolf line. Here we have the Zodiac Olympus. So this is their 37mm. This one's a little bit dressier compared to their more funky and eccentric dial colors and configurations. This is more conventional on the surface, but also with its crown position, its case styling, it is not quite most conventional. It's conventional by Zodiac standards, so that's probably how I'll put it. 10mm in thickness, lug to lug of 45mm, so is going to wear larger, I'd say closer to 38.5mm case, water resistance of 50 meters, and an STP 313 movement on the inside. This is the Fossil Group's alternative to the ETA 2824 or say Sellita SW200. Fossil Group has now taken over control and has pretty much revived the brand of Zodiac. If anybody has a ton of experience with the STP movements, ownership experience, love to see comments down below, because I know there's some people that have some resistance to any of these other just third-party providers that are coming out, and I think that gives a lot of people some peace of mind on what they think of the watches. We, when selling Zodiac, have not had a lot of issues with their movements, but something I always throw out there, similar to when I bring up like the Tudor Black Bay GMT, just giving some people confidence for the future if they are looking to buy. Now taking a significant jump up to the high horology tier, we have the AP Royal Oak the 15550. So I adore this version of the Royal Oak. I don't think it gets considered enough at 37 millimeters. This is the latest creation, paying honor to the 50-year tradition of the Royal Oak, being originally unveiled in 1972 by Gerald Genta and his iconic design. This watch retails $24,100, 37 millimeters, thickness of 8.9 millimeters, and a water resistance rating of 50 meters. Now, the big thing here is going to be the movement, automatic AP 5900, and of course, also on the flip side, talking about the wearing dimensions of this piece. If you've ever tried on a Royal Oak, I would say every Royal Oak wears at least 1.5 millimeters to 2 millimeters larger than what you might think, at least on paper. So always keep that in mind. If I was going to own a Royal Oak, I would get something probably in this size and configuration, because they all do wear larger. And I think when looking at the Royal Oak, this is a watch that I was, not that crazy about, but I've just continued to, after wearing a lot of these integrated styles, I do have just come to appreciate the Royal Oak more. It's one of those watches that you fall in and out of love with if you are able to just identify it, wear it, and understand its story and history. People can say what they want about the AP being a one-trick pony, but if my pony is the Royal Oak, I'm a happy pony owner. That's all I'll say. And last up on our list here, we have one of my favorite releases for 2022 in the Vacheron Constantin Historique 222. This was a crazy surprise this year when at Watches and Wonders, and when I'm able to actually handle this watch in person, I kind of fell in love with it. Now the price is up there. They are going to, of course, be thoughtful on production, so not going to be the easiest watches to get. But even with that being the case, I think these watches are simply beautiful. I remember going to Vacheron's headquarters and learning about the history of the 222, originally unveiled in 1977. It was not a Genta design. It followed the Nautilus, it followed the Royal Oak, but there was something about the design that I thought was very cool. The bracelet, its integration, the Maltese cross on the lug and integrated case style design, which is a nice little signature. The handset, how thin it was, the gold tone of the case. It just had this incredible look to it that was so Vacheron, and it was a watch that originally I remember just left an impression on me. I remember the 1921 and I remember the 222. And when handling the new 222, it is essentially a direct one-to-one to the 1970s version. And I remember when we were shooting this, and if you've ever been to a trade show, even in another industry, you know that it's just chaos. Everything is just moving so quickly. We were trying to shoot the 222, the new one, and they also had the older version as well there. And I remember just doing a double take a couple times, and I was like, wait, oh yeah, it's this one, it's this one. Now that could be a positive or a negative depending on how you look at it, but I thought this watch was simply beautiful. 7.95 millimeters in thickness, water resistance of 50 meters, and a beautiful movement on the inside. I think it was a job well done by Vacheron for a brand that I certainly love. But all right guys, that is my take looking at some of the best watches at 37 millimeters. Were there any watches that I did not include here that you would include in a list like this? I was not able to include everything, so any comments down below for some additional recommendations will be good for other people that are watching this and maybe want to explore even further. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Really do appreciate all the support, and that really does help out these videos. I don't just say that, so I really would appreciate if you were able to do that, especially give the video a thumbs up. It's a great indicator that you want us to keep this series going. We have not covered every single case size, so there's plenty more to cover in the future. Also, definitely check out TeddyBaldassarre.com, full authorized dealer of 30 brands, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support, and a full factory warranty for all the products that we offer. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.